The massive alien ship hung in space like a crystal palace made of stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of the USS Freedom, watching the beautiful vessel grow larger as they approached. He had seen many alien ships before, but nothing quite like this one. The Zephyrian royal flagship sparkled with lights that seemed to dance across its surface. "Captain, we're receiving their docking instructions," said Lieutenant Alex Turner from his station. The young communications officer looked nervous. This was only his second diplomatic mission, and meeting an alien queen was not something they taught you about in training. Jake nodded and straightened his dress uniform. "Tell them we're ready to dock. Dr. Campbell, are you prepared?" Dr. Lisa. Campbell looked up from her tablet, where she was reviewing everything they knew about Zephyrian biology. "As ready as I can be, Captain. We don't have much information about their species, but I've prepared for basic biological scans if they allow it." The docking process went smoothly. As the airlock opened, Jake felt the slight change in air pressure that told him they were now breathing Zephyrian atmosphere. It smelled different, like flowers mixed with something metallic. The gravity felt a bit heavier too, making his steps feel more solid. A tall figure waited for them in the docking bay. The alien stood at least 7 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. His eyes were large and silver, and when he spoke, his voice had a musical quality. "Welcome aboard the royal vessel Starlight Crown. I am Minister Kethron, advisor to Queen Zarathil. Her Majesty awaits you in the Great Hall." Jake stepped forward and gave a small bow. "Thank you, Minister. I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is Dr. Lisa Campbell, our xenobiologist, and Lieutenant Alex Turner, our communications officer." "Minister." Catherine studied them with those strange silver eyes. Jake could see curiosity there, but also something else. Maybe doubt or even pity. "Please follow me. The Queen is eager to meet the representatives of humanity." They walked through corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. The walls pulsed with soft light, and Jake could hear what sounded like distant music. Dr. Campbell was trying to be subtle about taking readings with her scanner, but Jake noticed her eyes were wide with wonder. The great hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Jake could barely see the top. Floating platforms held groups of Zephyrians, who all turned to watch the human delegation enter. At the far end of the hall, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive diamond, sat Queen Zara Thel. Jake had to work hard not to stare. The Queen was 8 feet tall and absolutely stunning. Her skin was the same pale blue as the others, but it seemed to shimmer with tiny lights like stars. Her hair was long and silver, flowing around her shoulders like liquid metal. She wore robes that changed color as she moved, and her eyes were the deepest purple Jake had ever seen. But it was not just her beauty that caught his attention. There was power in the way she sat, in the way she looked at them. This was someone who was used to being obeyed without question. "Approach," the Queen said, and her voice filled the entire hall without effort. Jake led his team forward, stopping at what he hoped was a respectful distance. He gave another bow, this time deeper than before. "Your Majesty, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel USS Freedom. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendship between our peoples." Queen Zarathil studied him for a long minute. Then she smiled, but it was not a warm smile. "How interesting. So these are the humans we have heard whispers about. Much smaller than I expected." There was laughter from the watching Zephyrians. Jake kept his face calm, but he could feel heat rising in his cheeks. Next to him, Dr. Campbell shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, we may be smaller in body, but we hope our friendship can be great in spirit," Jake replied. The Queen's smile grew wider. "Well spoken, little human. Come, let us dine together. I am curious to learn more about your kind." The dinner was held in a smaller hall, though it was still larger than anything Jake had seen on a human ship. The food was strange, but not unpleasant, though Jake noticed that Dr. Campbell was being very careful about what she ate. Alex barely touched his plate, too nervous to do more than push the alien food around Dot as they ate. Queen Zarathel asked many questions about Earth and human society. She seemed particularly interested in their government and military. Jake answered as honestly as he could, while being diplomatic. "Tell me, Captain Morrison," the Queen said as servants brought what looked like dessert, "how do your people handle genetic purity? Surely you must have strict rules about breeding?" Jake blinked, surprised by the question. "Your Majesty, humans generally choose their own partners based on love and compatibility. We don't have rules about genetics." "How primitive," said Minister Kethron from across the table. "The Zephyrian bloodline has remained pure for over 10,000 years. It is what makes us strong and superior to other races." Dr. Campbell spoke, up for the first time during dinner. "Actually, genetic diversity tends to create stronger populations. Pure bloodlines often develop weaknesses over time." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Queen Zarathel's purple eyes focused on Dr. Campbell with an intensity that made the human doctor shrink back in her chair. "Are you suggesting that the Zephyrian way is wrong, little human?" the Queen asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Not wrong, Your Majesty," Dr. Campbell said quickly. "Just different. Every species develops its own methods." Minister Kethron leaned forward. "Perhaps we should be more concerned about contamination. What if these humans attempt to breed with our people? The very thought is disgusting." Queen Zarathel threw back her head and laughed. It was a sound like crystal bells, beautiful but also mocking. "Breed with humans? My dear Kethron, that is impossible. Our genetics are so far advanced beyond theirs that crossbreeding could never occur. It would be like trying to mate a dragon with a butterfly." More laughter rippled around the table. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to remain calm. Getting angry would not help the diplomatic mission. "Besides," the Queen continued, still chuckling, "even if it were possible, can you imagine the result? Weak, stunted creatures that could barely survive. No, Minister, you need not worry about genetic contamination from humans. They are far too primitive to pose any threat to our bloodline." The laughter grew louder. Jake could see that Alex was turning red, and Dr. Campbell looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. But Jake had been in worse situations before. He took a sip of the strange Zephyrian wine and smiled. "Your Majesty is very wise," he said calmly. "We humans have always been curious about other species, but we certainly understand the need to maintain traditions and customs. Perhaps we should focus on trade agreements rather than more personal connections." Queen Zarathil looked at him with something that might have been respect. "Very diplomatic, Captain. Yes, let us discuss trade. That is something your people might actually be useful for." The rest of the dinner passed more smoothly. They managed to work out a basic trade agreement that would allow human ships to stop at Zephyrian space stations for supplies and repairs. In return, humans would provide certain minerals that the Zephyrians needed, but did not want to mine themselves dot as they prepared to leave. Queen Zarathel stood and looked down at Jake. Even with her height advantage, he did not look away from those purple eyes. "This has been educational, Captain Morrison," she said. "Perhaps there is more to humans than first appears. Though, of course, you remain completely incompatible with superior species like ourselves." Jake bowed one final time. "Thank you for your hospitality, Your Majesty. I hope this is the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples." As they walked back to their ship, Alex finally spoke up. "Captain, that was humiliating. How could You just sit there while they laughed at us? Jake put a hand on the young officer's shoulder. Sometimes, Alex, the best response to ignorance is patience. Let them think what they want for now. Dr. Campbell was quiet until they were back on their own ship. Then she turned to Jake with a strange expression. Captain, there's something you should know. While I was scanning them during dinner, I picked up some interesting readings. What kind of readings? Their genetics aren't as different from ours as they think. In fact, there are some surprising similarities. The Queen may be very wrong about the impossibility of crossbreeding. Jake raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I'd need more data to be certain, but yes. Their arrogance might be their downfall someday. Dr. Campbell smiled grimly. Maybe sooner than they think. 3 weeks had passed since the first dinner, and Captain Jake Morrison found himself returning to the Zephyrian flagship more often than he had expected. The trade negotiations were going well, but they were taking much longer than usual. Queen Zarathel seemed to find new details to discuss at every meeting. Jake walked through the crystal corridors of the Starlight Crown, heading toward another private meeting with the Queen. These sessions had become different from the formal dinners. It was just him and her, discussing trade routes and supply agreements. But lately, Jake had noticed something strange in the way she looked at him. Captain Morrison, Minister Kethron, appeared beside him as he approached the Queen's private chambers. Her Majesty is waiting for you. Thank you, Minister, Jake replied. He had noticed that Kethron always seemed uncomfortable when Jake came for these private meetings. The Queen's private chamber was smaller than the Great Hall, but still impressive. The walls were made of the same living crystal, but here they pulsed with softer, warmer colors. Queen Zarathel sat on a simpler chair, though it was still clearly a throne. She wore fewer jewels today, and her robes were a deep blue that matched her skin. Captain, she said as he entered, please sit. We have much to discuss. Jake took the chair across from her. Over the past 3 weeks, he had grown used to her height and presence. She was still intimidating, but he no longer felt the need to look away from her purple eyes. Your Majesty, the supply route through the Nebula 7 system should work well for both our peoples. Jake began, pulling out his tablet with the trade information. Yes, yes, the Queen waved a hand dismissively. The trade agreements are nearly complete, but I find myself curious about other things. Jake looked up from his tablet. Other things? Queen Zarathel stood and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. Tell me, Captain, how do humans show respect to their leaders? The question seemed odd, but Jake answered honestly. We salute our military officers and show politeness to our government officials. But in human society, respect is usually earned rather than demanded. The Queen turned to look at him, and Jake saw something in her expression that he had not seen before. Was it loneliness? Earned respect, she repeated slowly. What an interesting concept. Among my people, respect is given because of bloodline and position. No one questions my decisions or speaks to me as an equal. Jake stood and moved closer to the window. That must be difficult sometimes. Always having to be perfect, never being able to show weakness. Queen Zarathel stared at him in surprise. You are the first being in centuries to suggest that my position might have difficulties. How do you dare to speak to me in such a way? Because you asked me a question, and I gave you an honest answer, Jake replied simply. You wanted to know about human respect. We respect honesty and courage, not just titles. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked Jake completely. She laughed, but not the mocking laugh from the dinner. This was a real laugh, warm and genuine. You are a strange creature, Jake Morrison, she said, using his first name for the first time. My people bow and scrape and tell me only what they think I want to hear, but you treat me like... She paused, searching for words. Like a person? Jake suggested. Yes, like a person. She moved closer to him, and Jake could smell her scent. It was like flowers and starlight. It is refreshing. And confusing. Jake felt something shift in the air between them. The Queen was standing very close now, close enough that he had to look up to meet her eyes. He should probably step back, maintain proper diplomatic distance. But something about her expression stopped him. Your Majesty, he began. Zara, she interrupted. When we are alone, you may call me Zara. Zara, Jake said, testing the name. Is everything all right? You seem different today. Queen Zarethel raised one hand and touched Jake's face gently. Her skin was warm and surprisingly soft. I have been thinking about what you said. About earning respect. About being honest. Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was definitely not part of the diplomatic mission. What have you been thinking? I have been thinking that perhaps I was too quick to judge your species. Too quick to dismiss you as primitive. Her thumb traced along his cheek. You intrigue. Me, Jake Morrison. You do not fear me, but you do not disrespect me either. You see me as I am, not just as a queen. Jake knew he should step away. This could cause a diplomatic incident. But the way she was looking at him made it impossible to move. Zara, this is complicated. Our peoples barely know each other. And you made it very clear that humans and Zephyrians are incompatible. The Queen smiled, and this time it was neither mocking nor diplomatic. It was something much more personal. I said many things that night. Perhaps I was wrong about some of them. She leaned down slightly, bringing her face closer to his. Jake could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. This close, he could see tiny flecks of silver in her purple eyes. This is not wise, Jake sighed, but he made no move to back away. I am tired of being wise, Zara whispered. I am tired of doing only what is expected of a queen. For once, I want to do something because I want to, not because it is proper. Before Jake could respond, she kissed him. Her lips were warm and soft, and there was something electric about the contact. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity, but pleasant. When they separated, both of them were breathing hard. That was ... double quotes, Jake started. Unexpected, Zara finished. I thought my pheromones would make you compliant, easy to control. But instead, you seem to be affecting me. Jake blinked. Pheromones? Zara looked confused. Zephyrians naturally produce chemicals that influence the emotions of other species. It is one of the ways we maintain control over our empire. But yours seem to be working differently. Different how? Instead of making you submissive, they seem to be enhancing your natural confidence. And your scent is affecting me in ways I do not understand. She stepped back slightly, looking concerned. This should not be possible. Jake felt a moment of doubt. Was this attraction real, or just alien biology? But when he looked into Zara's eyes, he saw the same confusion and uncertainty that he felt. Maybe, Jake said slowly, our species are more compatible than either of us realized. Zara stared at him for a long minute. Then she moved closer again, and this time when she kissed him, there was nothing hesitant about it. Jake responded, pulling her closer despite the voice in his head that warned him about diplomatic consequences. They stayed in each other's arms for what felt like hours, talking quietly and learning about each other in ways that had nothing to do with trade, agreements, or politics. Zara told him about the loneliness of being a queen, about the pressure to always be perfect. Jake talked about Earth, about the beauty of blue skies and real sunlight. I should go, Jake finally said as the ship's lights dimmed to simulate nighttime. My crew will wonder where I am. Zara nodded, though she seemed reluctant to let him leave. Yes, and we must be careful. If my people discovered this, It could cause problems for both our species. Jake stood and straightened his uniform. What happens next? I do not know. Zara admitted, this is not something I planned or expected. But I do not regret it. Neither do I. Jake said honestly. As he walked toward the door, Zara called his name. Jake, what we shared tonight, it felt real to you? Not just alien influence? Jake turned back to look at her. Even disheveled and uncertain, she was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. It felt real to me. More real than anything has. In a long time. Zara smiled, and this time it was completely genuine. Good, because despite what I said about genetic compatibility, I find myself hoping I was wrong about that too. Jake left the Queen's chambers with his mind spinning. As he walked back to his ship, he passed Dr. Campbell in the corridor. She took one look at his face and raised an eyebrow. Captain, you look ... different. Is everything all right with the yacht? Negotiations? Everything is fine, Doctor, Jake replied, though he was not sure that was true. Just more complicated than expected. Dr. Campbell watched him walk away with a thoughtful expression. She had been taking more biological readings during their visits to the Zephyrian ship, and some of her recent data was very interesting. If her suspicions were correct, things were about to become much more complicated than the captain realized. Back in her chambers, Queen Zarathel sat alone, touching her lips where Jake had kissed her. For the first time in her long life, she had acted on impulse rather than duty. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She told herself it was just curiosity, just a moment of rebellion against her rigid royal life. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. The human captain had awakened something in her that she had not even known was sleeping. What she did not know was that their encounter had set in motion biological processes that would change everything. She believed about genetics, compatibility, and the future of both their species. 3 months had passed since the human delegation left Zephyrian space. Queen Zarathel stood in her private chambers, staring out at the stars and thinking about Jake Morrison more often than she should. The trade agreements were working well, but she found herself missing the private meetings they had shared. Lately, she had been feeling strange. At first, she blamed it on stress from managing the empire. There were always disputes to settle and decisions to make. But the feeling was getting worse, not better. Your Majesty, came a soft voice from behind her. Healer Veltar, the royal physician, entered the chamber with his medical scanner in hand. You asked me to come. Zara turned to face him. Healer. Veltar was old, even by Zephyrian standards. His blue skin had faded to almost white, and his silver eyes held the wisdom of many centuries. He had served 3 generations of royal family. Yes, Veltar. I have been feeling unwell for several weeks now. Tired, dizzy, and my appetite has changed. Perhaps you could examine me. The healer bowed respectfully. Of course, Your Majesty. Please sit and let me scan you. Zara sat on her throne, while Veltar ran the medical scanner over her body. The device hummed softly as it collected data about her biological functions. She had undergone this same examination hundreds of times over the years, so she was not concerned. But as the minutes passed, she noticed that Veltar's expression was changing. His eyes grew wider, and his hands began to shake slightly as he read the scanner's results. Veltar, what is wrong? Zara asked. You look like you have seen a ghost. The healer stared at his scanner, then looked at the Queen, then back at the scanner again. Your Majesty, I must run the scan again. There appears to be an error in the readings. What kind of error? The scanner is showing results that are biologically impossible. Please, allow me to use the advanced medical equipment in my laboratory. Zara felt a flutter of worry in her stomach. Very well. But first, tell me what the scanner is showing. Veltar hesitated. Your Majesty, according to these readings, you are pregnant. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She gripped the arms of her throne so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. That is impossible. I have not been with any Zephyrian male. Exactly why I believe there is an error, Your Majesty. Perhaps the scanner is malfunctioning. But even as he said the words, Zara felt a cold realization creeping over her. She thought about the night she had spent with Jake Morrison, the strange tingling sensation when they kissed, the way their biology seemed to react to each other in unexpected ways. Run the advanced scans, she whispered, all of them. 2 hours. Later, Zara sat in Healer Veltar's laboratory, surrounded by the most sophisticated medical equipment in the Zephyrian Empire. The old healer had run every test he could think of, and now he sat across from her with the expression of complete shock. Your Majesty, he said slowly, you are indeed pregnant. But the genetic readings are unlike anything I have ever seen. Explain, Zara commanded, though her voice was barely above a whisper. The embryo carries both Zephyrian and non-Zephyrian DNA, but not just any alien DNA. The computer has been analyzing the foreign genetic material for the past hour. He paused and looked at her with amazement. Your Majesty, the father appears to be human. The laboratory fell completely silent, except for the soft humming of machines. Zara stared at the healer, her mind struggling to process what he had just told her. That is scientifically impossible, she finally said. I stated so myself at the diplomatic dinner. Our species cannot interbreed. According to everything we know about genetics, you are correct. But the evidence is right here. Veltar gestured to the screens showing the scan results. The embryo is definitely half human, half Zephyrian. Zara stood and began pacing around the laboratory. This cannot be real. You must have made a mistake. I have checked and rechecked the results, Your Majesty. I even had the computer run a full genetic analysis 3 separate times. The results are consistent. Veltar pulled up a display showing the embryo's DNA structure. Look at this. The human genetic material is not just present, it is actively integrating with your Zephyrian genes in ways that should be impossible. Zara stopped pacing and stared at the screen. The swirling patterns of DNA looked like nothing she had ever seen before. What does this mean for the child? I do not know, Your Majesty. This is completely new territory. But the embryo appears to be healthy and developing normally, despite the genetic impossibility of its existence. Before Zara could respond, the laboratory door burst open. Minister Kethran entered without waiting for permission, his face flushed with anger. Your Majesty, I must speak with you immediately. There are rumors spreading through the ship about your health. Some are saying... He stopped when he saw the genetic displays on the laboratory screens. His silver eyes went wide with horror. Catherine, Zara said firmly, you will not speak of what you have seen here. But the minister was staring at the screens in disbelief. Your Majesty, please tell me this is not real. Please tell me you have not contaminated our royal bloodline with alien genetics. I am pregnant, Zara said simply. That is all you need to know. Pregnant with what? Catherine's voice was rising. Your Majesty, this is a disaster. If word of this reaches the Empire, it could destroy everything our people have built. Our genetic purity is the foundation of our superiority. Healer Veltar stepped between the Queen and the Minister. Minister Kethron, you will lower your voice when speaking to Her Majesty. Do not lecture me about respect, old healer. This is about the survival of our species. Catherine turned back to Zara. Your Majesty, you must terminate this pregnancy immediately. We can say you were ill, nothing more. Zara felt a surge of anger unlike anything she had ever experienced. You dared to give me orders about my own body? I give you advice about the Empire, Your Majesty. What will happen when the people learn that their queen has bred with a primitive alien? What will the other noble families say when they discover that the heir to the throne is a half-breed? The word half-breed hit Zara like a slap. She had used similar language herself when mocking the possibility of human Zephyrian breeding. Now those words were being turned against her own child. "Get out," she said quietly. "Your Majesty, please. Listen to reason. Get out." Zara's voice echoed through the laboratory with such force that the walls seemed to vibrate. Minister Kethran bowed stiffly and left, but Zara could see the calculation in his eyes. He was already planning how to use this information. When they were alone again, Healer Veltar approached the Queen carefully. "Your Majesty, what are your wishes regarding the pregnancy?" Zara placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. "The child will be born, but we must be careful. Catherine is right about one thing. This will cause upheaval in the Empire. There is something else you should know, Your Majesty. The pregnancy may be dangerous. Your body is trying to adapt to carry a hybrid child, but I am not sure our medical knowledge is sufficient to ensure your safety." Zara nodded slowly. "What do you recommend?" "We may need help from human medical experts. They would understand the human genetic component better than we do." The idea of contacting Jake Morrison sent a mixture of emotions through Zara. Part of her longed to see him again, to tell him about the child. But another part of her was terrified of his reaction. "Not yet," she decided. "Let us monitor the situation first. If it becomes necessary, we can consider contacting the humans." Over the following days, rumors began to spread through the royal court. Servants whispered about the Queen's changed behavior and her increased security. Minister Kethran had not spread the news directly, but his worried meetings with other officials had not gone unnoticed. Meanwhile, far away in human space, Dr. Lisa Campbell sat in her laboratory aboard the USS Freedom, studying the biological samples she had secretly collected during their visits to the Zephyrian ship. Her analysis was yielding fascinating results. "Captain Morrison," she called over the communication system, "could you come to my lab? I have something important to show you." Jake arrived a few minutes later, looking curious. "What is it, Doctor?" Lisa pulled up her genetic analysis on the main screen. "Remember how Queen Zarathil said that humans and Zephyrians could never interbreed?" Yes, she was quite emphatic about it. Well, she was wrong, very wrong. Lisa pointed to the DNA comparisons. On the screen, human genetics are far more adaptable than any other species we have encountered. We have genetic sequences that can actually bridge the gaps between different alien biologies. Jake stared at the screen. "Are you saying that humans could successfully breed with Zephyrians? Not just Zephyrians. Potentially with any carbon-based alien species. Captain, this could change everything we know about human biology. We are not just another species. We are genetic bridges that could connect all the alien races in the galaxy." Jake felt a strange chill run down his spine. "Have you shared this information with anyone else?" "Not yet. I wanted to confirm my results first." "But Captain, if this is true, it means that humans are far more valuable than any alien species realizes. We could be the key to creating a truly united galactic community." As Dr. Campbell continued to explain her findings, Jake found himself thinking about Queen Zarathil. 6 weeks had passed since Queen Zarathil learned about her pregnancy, and the secret was becoming harder to keep. Her morning sickness had started, and she could no longer hide her frequent visits to Healer Veltar's laboratory. Worse, Minister. Kethran had been meeting with other court officials, and Zara could feel the political tension building. The breaking point came during a routine council meeting. Zara sat on her throne, trying to focus on reports about mining operations in the outer systems, when suddenly the room began to spin. She gripped the arms of her throne tightly, but the dizziness only got worse. "Your Majesty?" asked General Vekmer, the head of the royal guard. "Are you well?" Zara tried to answer, but instead she felt her stomach lurch. She quickly stood and rushed from the throne room, leaving behind a council of confused and worried officials. She barely made it to her private chambers before she was violently sick. Within hours, the entire royal court was buzzing with speculation about the Queen's health. By the next morning, Minister Kethron had called an emergency meeting of the High Council. "Fellow councilors," Kethron announced, as the group gathered in the secure council chamber, "I have grave news about Her Majesty's condition." Lord Vexstar, the eldest of the council members, leaned forward in his chair. "What news, Minister?" "We are all concerned about the Queen's recent illness." Kethron looked around the room dramatically. "What I am about to tell you will shock you to your very core. Our Queen, the keeper of our pure bloodline, has contaminated herself with alien genetics." The council chamber erupted in voices. Some councilors shouted in disbelief, others demanded proof, and a few sat in stunned silence. "Silence!" roared General Vekmer. "Minister Kethron, what exactly are you claiming?" "Queen Zarathel is pregnant with a hybrid child, half Zephyrian, half human." The silence that followed was complete and terrible. Lord Vexstar was the first to speak, his voice shaking with age and anger. "This is impossible. Our scientists have proven that Zephyrians cannot breed with inferior species." "I have seen the medical scans myself," Kethron replied. Healer Valtar confirmed it. "The Queen carries the child of the human Captain Jake Morrison." Counselor Nethsa, one of the younger members, stood up abruptly. "If this is true, then the Queen must step down immediately. She has violated the most sacred laws of our people." "The bloodline has been pure for 10,000 years, added Lord Vexstar. "This contamination threatens everything we are." "But, General," Vekmer raised his hand for silence. "The Queen is still our sovereign. We cannot simply remove her because we disagree with her personal choices." "Personal choices?" Catherine's voice rose to a shout. "She has destroyed the genetic integrity of the royal line. What will become of our empire when the other species learn that we are no longer pure? They will no longer fear or respect us." As the argument continued, Queen Zarathil was in her chambers, doubled over with pain. The pregnancy was becoming more difficult each day, and Healer Valtar's treatments were not helping. "Your Majesty," the old healer said quietly, "your body is struggling to adapt to the hybrid genetics. The child is developing faster than normal, and it requires nutrients that Zephyrian biology cannot easily provide." Zara pressed her hands against her swollen stomach. "What are you saying, Valtar?" "I am saying that without help, you may not survive this pregnancy. And neither will the child." The words hit Zara like ice water. What kind of help? Human medical assistance. They would understand the human genetic component better than I do. Perhaps together we could find a way to stabilize your condition. Zara closed her eyes. She had been avoiding this decision for weeks, but now she had no choice. Contact Captain Morrison. Tell him I need his help. 3 days later, the USS Freedom received an encrypted message that made Jake Morrison's heart race. "Queen Zarathil was asking for medical assistance," and the message hinted at something that could change everything between their species. "Dr. Campbell," Jake called over the ship's communication system, "report to my ready room immediately. And bring your medical equipment." When Lisa Campbell arrived, Jake showed her the message. Her eyes grew wide as she read it. "Captain, this sounds like she might be pregnant. And if she is asking for human medical help, ... you think it could be a hybrid pregnancy? Based on my genetic research, it is definitely possible. Captain, if Queen Zarathel is carrying a human Zephyrian child, This could be the most important biological event in galactic history. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and terror. "Get ready, Doctor. We are going back to Zephyrian space." The journey took 4 days, and Jake spent most of that time thinking about Zara and what this could mean. When they arrived at the coordinates in the message, they found the Starlight Crown waiting for them, but something was different. The ship seemed to be alone, with no escort vessels. As they docked, Jake noticed that the usual ceremony was missing. Only Healer Veltar waited for them in the docking bay, and he looked worried. "Captain Morrison, Dr. Campbell, thank you for coming. Her Majesty is in great need of your assistance." "What exactly is wrong?" Dr. Campbell asked as they hurried through the corridors. "The Queen is pregnant with a hybrid child, and her body is not adapting well to the mixed genetics. I fear for both her life and the life of the unborn child." They reached the Queen's chambers to find Zara lying on her bed, looking pale and weak. When she saw Jake, she tried to sit up, but he quickly moved to her side. "Zara, what have you done?" "To yourself?" he said softly, taking her hand. "I am dying, Jake," she whispered. "Our child is killing me." Dr. Campbell immediately began her medical scans, while Jake held Zara's hand. The readings were alarming. The Queen's body was burning through nutrients at an incredible rate, and her immune system was struggling to accept the hybrid embryo. "This is fascinating," Dr. Campbell murmured as she studied the data. "The human genetic material is trying to optimize the pregnancy, but it needs resources that Zephyrian biology does not naturally produce." Healer Veltar looked at the human doctor with desperate hope. "Can you help her?" "I think so, but I will. Need to synthesize some supplements that can bridge the gap between human and Zephyrian biological needs." Dr. Campbell turned to Jake. "Captain, I will need access to both species' complete medical databases. Whatever you need, Doctor." 4. The next 18 hours, Dr. Campbell and Healer Veltar worked together in the medical laboratory. They combined human biochemistry with Zephyrian healing techniques, creating treatments that had never been attempted before. Meanwhile, Jake stayed with Zara, watching over her as she drifted in and out of consciousness. During her lucid moments, they talked about the child and what it would mean for both their peoples. "Jake," she whispered during one of these conversations, "I am sorry I mocked your species. I was so wrong about everything." "You could not have known," Jake replied. "None of us knew what was possible. The Council wants me to step down. They say I have contaminated the royal bloodline." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. "What do you want to do?" "I want our child to live. I want to show my people that mixing genetics does not make us weaker. It makes us stronger." Dr. Campbell finally emerged from the laboratory with a vial of clear liquid. "I think this will work. It is a combination of human vitamins and Zephyrian cellular enhancers. It should help your body accept and nourish the hybrid embryo." They administered the treatment, and within hours, Zara's color began to return. The pain in her stomach eased, and for the first time in weeks, she was able to eat a full meal. "It is working," Healer Veltar said in amazement. "Her vital signs are stabilizing." But their relief was short-lived. General Vekmer appeared in the doorway with a squad of guards behind him. "Your Majesty," he said formally, "the High Council has voted. You are to be removed from the throne until after the birth of your child. Minister Catherine will serve as regent." Zara struggled to sit up, her face flushing with anger. "You dare to challenge my authority?" "We dare to save our empire from contamination," came a voice from behind the guards. Minister Catherine stepped into the room, his face cold with determination. "This pregnancy ends now," he announced. "The human child will be terminated, and proper medical treatment will restore the Queen to health." Jake stood up slowly, his hand moving to the weapon at his side. "I do not think so." Dr. Campbell looked around the room nervously. "Captain, We need to get the Queen somewhere safe. The stress from this confrontation could undo all the medical progress we have made. Healer Veltar stepped forward. Minister Kethron, as the royal physician, I must advise against any procedure that could harm Her Majesty. Your advice is no longer required, old healer. You have participated in this contamination by helping the humans. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Jake could see that some of the guards looked uncomfortable with the situation, but they remained loyal to their chain of command. Zara, Jake said quietly, what are your orders? Queen Zarathel looked around the room at the faces of her people, then at Jake and Dr. Campbell. When she spoke, her voice carried all the authority of her royal position. I am still your queen. This child will be born, and it will be the bridge between our species that leads us all to a greater future. Anyone who opposes this decision is committing treason. The standoff continued for several tense moments. 2 months had passed since the confrontation with Minister Kethron, and Queen Zarathel's pregnancy was nearing its end. The royal ship had become divided into 2 camps, those who supported the Queen and those who followed the minister. But as the birth approached, even some of Kethrain's supporters began to wonder what the child would actually be like. Dr. Lisa Campbell had remained on the Zephyrian ship, working closely with healer Veltar to monitor the pregnancy. The medical collaboration between human and Zephyrian science had produced remarkable results. Not only was Zara healthy, but the scans showed that the baby was developing abilities that neither species possessed alone. Captain Morrison, Dr. Campbell called as Jake entered the medical laboratory. You need to see these latest scans. Jake looked at the display screen showing the unborn child. Even he could see that something was unusual about the brain activity patterns. What am I looking at, Doctor? The baby's neural development is unlike anything we have ever recorded. It appears to have inherited telepathic abilities from the Zephyrian side, but the human genetics are enhancing those abilities in ways we did not expect. Healer Veltar nodded excitedly. The child's mind seems to be processing information at incredible speeds. It is as if the human adaptability is supercharging the Zephyrian psychic powers. Jake felt a mixture of pride and concern. Is this dangerous? We do not think so, Dr. Campbell replied. But we are definitely witnessing the birth of something new. This child could have abilities that surpass both parent species. Before Jake could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Queen Zarathel was going into labor. They rushed to the Queen's chambers to find her breathing heavily, her face tight with pain. But despite the discomfort, her eyes were bright with excitement. Jake, she gasped as another contraction hit her. Our child is coming. I am here, Jake said, taking her hand. Everything will be fine. The birth was unlike anything the medical team had ever experienced. As the baby emerged, the air in the room seemed to shimmer with energy. Every electronic device flickered, and both Jake and Zara felt a strange tingling sensation in their minds. Then they heard it, not with their ears, but directly in their thoughts. A gentle, curious mental voice saying, "Hello." Dr. Campbell stared at her medical scanner in amazement. The baby is telepathically communicating, and it is only seconds old. Healer Veltar carefully lifted the newborn and placed him in Zara's arms. The child was beautiful, with his mother's blue-tinted skin but his father's brown eyes. When he looked at Jake, those eyes seemed far too intelligent for a newborn. "Hello, little one," Jake whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. Again, that mental voice responded, clearer this time. "Father, Mother, I understand you," Zara gasped. "He knows us. He actually knows who we are." "Not just knows," Dr. Campbell said, studying her readings. "He is learning at an incredible rate. His brain is processing language, emotions, and concepts that should take years to develop." The baby, they had decided to name him Prince Kaiden, seemed to be absorbing information from everyone around him. Within hours, he was communicating complex thoughts telepathically. Within days, he was demonstrating abilities that amazed even the Zephyrian scientists. But not everyone was pleased with these developments. Minister Kethron and his supporters viewed the child's abilities as proof that the hybrid genetics were dangerous and uncontrollable. "This creature is an abomination," Kethran declared at an emergency council meeting. "Its powers are already beyond our understanding. What happens when it grows older? Will it be able to control our minds? Will it view pure Zephyrians as inferior?" General Vekmer, who had gradually shifted to supporting the Queen, disagreed. "The child shows no signs of aggression or malice. If anything, his abilities could benefit our entire empire." "How can you be so blind?" Catherine shouted. "This hybrid threatens everything we have built. Our genetic purity, our superiority, our very identity as Zephyrians." The argument was interrupted when the chamber's doors opened and Queen Zarathal entered, carrying baby Kaiden in her arms. She had recovered from the birth remarkably quickly, another sign of how the hybrid genetics had strengthened rather than weakened her. "Enough," she said firmly. "I have listened to these debates for too long. It is time for all of you to see the truth." She walked to the center of the room and gently placed Kaiden on the floor. The baby, now only a week old, sat up on his own and looked around at the assembled council members with those intelligent brown eyes. Then something extraordinary happened. Kaiden reached out with his mind and touched each person in the room. But instead of trying to control them, he shared his feelings with them. They felt his love for his parents, his curiosity about the world, and his complete lack of fear or hatred toward anyone. Minister Kethrin staggered backward, his face pale. "What did he do to us?" "He showed you his heart," Zara explained. "This child has no desire to dominate or control. He wants to understand and help bring our peoples together." Healer Veltar stepped forward. "Your Majesty, there is something else. Dr. Campbell and I have been studying the child's genetics, and we have made a remarkable discovery." "What discovery?" "The human genetic material does not just enhance Zephyrian abilities. It acts as a bridge that could allow compatibility with other alien species as well. Prince Kaiden may be able to connect with any intelligent life form we encounter." The implications of this statement sent murmurs throughout the chamber. If true, it meant that humans were not just another alien species, but the key to uniting. All the races of the galaxy. Dr. Campbell entered the chamber at that moment, carrying a datapad with her latest research. "Your Majesty, I have just received a communication from other human ships in this sector. Word about Prince Kaiden has spread, and several alien species are requesting to meet him." "What species?" Jake asked. "The Crystalline Collective, the Feathered Hierarchy, and even the Silicon Brotherhood. Species that have never been able to communicate with each other are all curious about the hybrid child." Queen Zarathal looked down at her son, who was now playing with a small holographic toy that responded to his thoughts. "It seems our little prince is already changing the galaxy." Over the following weeks, representatives from various alien species arrived to meet Prince Kaiden. Each encounter was remarkable. The baby was able to establish mental connections with beings that had previously been completely incompatible. With Zephyrian telepathy, the Crystalline Collective, who communicated through harmonic vibrations, found that Kaiden could translate their music-like language into thoughts that other species could understand. The Silicon Brotherhood, whose computer-based minds had always been isolated, discovered that the hybrid child could bridge the gap between organic and artificial intelligence. Minister Kethron watched these developments with growing amazement, and eventually acceptance. During a private meeting with Queen Zarathiel, he finally admitted his mistake. Your Majesty, I was wrong. Terribly wrong. I let fear and pride blind me to the possibilities that your child represents. Zara, holding Kaiden as he telepathically played with a crystal butterfly sent by the collective, smiled at her former opponent. Fear is natural when we face change, Kethran. But our son has shown us that change can bring beauty instead of destruction. What do we do now? The minister asked. We learn. We grow. We help our son build bridges between all the intelligent species in the galaxy. Jake, who had been watching from nearby, approached them. Zara, I have been thinking. The human government needs to know about what has happened here. This changes everything about our place in the galactic community. Yes, Zara agreed. And my people need to understand that genetic purity is not strength. True strength comes from diversity and cooperation. 6 months after Prince Kaiden's birth, Queen Zarathel stood before the full assembly of the Zephyrian Empire. Representatives from a dozen alien species filled the Great Hall, all of them connected through the mental bridge that her son provided. My people, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. I once believed that our genetic purity made us superior to all other life forms. I mocked the possibility of breeding with humans, calling it impossible and disgusting. She paused and looked at Jake, who stood beside her with their son in his arms. I was not just wrong. I was foolish beyond measure. The human Captain Jake, Morrison, and our son, Prince Kaiden, have shown us that true evolution comes not from isolation, but from connection. Not from purity, but from diversity. The assembly listened in respectful silence as their queen continued. From this day forward, the Zephyrian Empire will work toward a new goal. Not domination over other species, but cooperation with them. We will use the gifts that humans have brought us to help build a galaxy where all intelligent life can thrive together. As she spoke, Prince Kaiden looked out at the gathered representatives with his wise brown eyes. Through his mental bridge, every being in the chamber could feel the hope and possibility that his existence represented. The queen who had once laughed at the thought of breeding with humans now held the future of galactic unity in her arms. And that future looked brighter than anyone had ever dared to imagine. The age of genetic prejudice was ending. The age of cooperation and understanding had begun.